Serious Redditors, who had arranged marriage, was sex awkward initially? How did you break the ice? My wife and I had an arranged marriage which was pretty textbook. We met once before we got engaged. Met 4 more times, once on Valentine's Day, once on her birthday, once on mine before we got married 4 months later. It's funny, but it wasn't awkward at all for us. My wife was a bit nervous, but we were pretty hot for each other from day one, so smooth sailing all the way. Throwaway here for some reasons that will become clear in a minute. I'll give a little background to how the whole thing came about to put having sex with my first cousin into context. Spoiler alert. My marriage was arranged-ish, in that it was not love-based initially. So, I'm of Pakistani descent. I was born in the UK, as was my mum, but my dad is from Pakistan. He moved here when he married my mum at 22 years old, so generally speaking we, as a family, is quite British. Recently I finished my degree and I had been working for a couple of years, at which point my mum and dad asked me if I wanted to get married. In Pakistani culture it is not expected that your children go out and date or whatever. Standard practice is usually for parents of the children to discuss marriage plans on behalf of the children, and the level of involvement varies between cultures, ethnicity, religion, etc. Anyway, my mum said she had thought about the possibility of me marrying my cousin. I'm the dude in this scenario, by the way, and asked me what I thought. I was initially pretty grossed out by it, but she asked me to mull over the decision for a while. A couple of months later my mum said that my aunt said that my cousin, now wife, is willing to chat to me about it if I am. Turns out she was actually playing me at this point, because my wife hadn't been told about this at all, but my aunt was potentially on board with the possibility, so she did this to get me to make up my mind quickly. Which I did, and I agreed to meet at some point. After all, she was hot. Yeah, I know that sounds gross to you. We met up and had the most awkward first date ever conceived in the history of mankind, where basically we discussed virtually every aspect of normal dating into one 3-hour dinner where we basically discussed our likes, dislikes, what we find attractive in the other person, personality traits, etc. Like I said, super awkward. At the end of the dinner we had literally agreed to marry each other, which was the surrealist experience of my life. Afterwards I talked about it with my brother and sister, who had apparently known about this plan for me and her to marry before I did, and they've been poking fun of me ever since. One of the really weird things I found out about that dinner is that she is apparently super horny, which something pretty strange to find out about your cousin. And about 2 weeks after our engagement, we had been talking a bit and I sent her some semi-lewd innuendo texts which eventually blew into full-blown sexting. Yes, 2 weeks after I agreed to marry my cousin we were sexting on a regular basis. Also about this point I found out that she knows nothing about sex. Now we were both virgins, but the fact that she had never had an orgasm and wanted to give BJs with condoms on sounds weird to me, but hey. A couple of weeks later I send her some non-explicit nude shots and we trade back and forth. A couple of weeks after that she comes over to my house and we make out under the guise of going to the supermarket to get onions. At this point I would like to state how surprisingly cool my parents were with all of this. Going into this all I assumed, since we are all pretty religious, that we would be banned from seeing each other until the wedding or something, but we were allowed to act pretty freely and it was implied that we knew we couldn't have sex. A little while later making out turns to groping, rubbing over other underwear, and a little while later we were sending each other full-blown nude pics, videos. This would have been about 6 months after we were engaged. This continued on for another 6 months until we got married. The actual wedding night the sex wasn't awkward per se. The actual act was, like, physically doing it after talking about it for almost a year, but in terms of breaking the ice or anything we didn't have that problem because we were super horny for each other at this point. I had arranged marriage this past June. We talked over the phone 3 months beforehand as we were both in different countries. I had read a lot about sex for the first time, which helped me prep up for the first night. This made it not awkward cause I knew how to make it comfortable for her. There was lot of foreplay, so that made it less awkward. and she says that first night was the best sex she had of all times we had since then. Every time we have sex is worse than the last. Thanks. Hi, my first marriage was arranged-ish. My husband family made an arrangement with my father when I was 12 that I would marry their middle son, who was 2 years older than me when I was 18 and had finished school. I knew him already. His sister was my best friend and he was friends with my brothers. We never talked much till we made our engagement official, and he had paid me my mahr, and in the about 6 months between our engagement and our wedding we hung out and went on dates, talked on the phone, got to know each other personally. I grew to like him a lot. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I loved him. I grew to love him eventually, and he was a very nice, caring, sweet guy and treated me well. He supported me going to university. We had a good life together. We loved traveling together. We both loved photography. We had been talking about having kids when I was finished with university. We weren't married very long, only 2 years before he died in a car accident. I think we could have made things work with more time. As far as your question, sex was fine. We were both virgins when got married. I tried doing what I saw in porn, but it didn't work out too well, but like all things we got better with practice. P.S. I am from Jordan, grew up mostly in South Korea and the US, Sunni Muslim at the time of this, atheist now. I currently live in Korea with my new husband. No arranged. I met him at a party. Your 2-year-old son and our dog. Indian American, born and raised in New York here. I had an arranged marriage to a girl in India at 29. I was getting fed up with the dating scene and told my dad that maybe getting married from India wouldn't be such a bad idea. He signed me up for a matrimonial site for Indians. I met my wife by chance on this thing while she was working in Dubai. I have dated a few people in my 20s and 2 of them got serious enough that marriage was being discussed when we split. I've dated girls casually as well as a FWB. Going in, I thought I was well beyond puppy love and was convinced that arranged marriages were for convenience, security, and all the boring but comfortable things that my Indian parents gave as arguments for arranged marriage. She was extremely shy and spoke in a low tone for our first conversation. Her English isn't as good as mine, but I speak our language fluently, so we mainly communicated that way. Eventually this turned into Skyping for hours every day for 4 months. The topics we discussed were absolutely the most innocent things you could imagine. I mean, absolutely nothing near sexual was discussed, but I felt like I was really connecting with someone like I hadn't before. I also found myself really excited at the prospect of meeting her. One of my previous relationships was 3 years, and I felt more honest and safe with this stranger in Dubai over the internet. I had a little anxiety attack the week before I flew out to India to meet her, but I convinced myself that I had no less than a 50-50 shot that this would turn out great for me, and carried on. We met and I was floored with how pretty she was. I was used to seeing her son's makeup after her shift nurse over webcam. I was really happy with how pretty she is that way, so I was smiling ear to ear when I saw how absolutely stunning she looked in person. Dressed up in a sari, we talked. I confirmed that I still felt the same way in person as over the internet, and I officially proposed that afternoon after a walk followed by her older brother and wife at about 100 paces. We got married that Sunday. It was awesome. So much more awesome than I expected my wedding to be. We partied until 1 a.m. before winding it up and going back to our room. I knew we were both thinking about it, but no one said anything. She sat on one side of the bed nervously looking through her bag. I sat on the other side kind of wondering if I should just go over and put my hand on her boob or something. So I got up and did what I thought would be pretty clear sign. I took off my shoes and socks, took off my shirt and went into the bathroom and ran the water. I stood there for about 5 minutes silently as I waited for her to follow. She didn't. I took a shower with the door slightly ajar, waiting for her to come in. She didn't. I stood behind that door ass naked and tried to get her to come in by asking for a towel. She stuck her arm through the door, gave me the towel and sat back down. My proud erection was a little confused. She was extremely innocent, but I don't think I could have been clearer without saying, "Come in here. I'd like you to see my penis." so I got dressed and sat on the bed next to her. She got up and went into the bathroom with a pile of clothes. I heard the latch slide over and a door chain being used. I sat through a long shower and watched her come out wearing cotton PJs with some stupid floral print on them. Not sexy sleepwear like I would have expected. She turned the lights off and sat next to me in silence under the covers. 5 minutes of silence before I decided to try tickling her side. She grabbed my hand and I felt her hold it, so I rolled over and planted one on her mouth. She kissed back like the first girl I ever kissed. Awkward but excitedly. We made out like I haven't made out since probably high school. Extremely fumbly heavy petting from both sides eventually ended up in shirts and pants being taken off. We were both naked but not doing anything yet. I eventually just took her hand as we were making out and put it on my dick. She held it like she was holding a flashlight while kissing me, so I was forced to reassess the situation and come up with an alternative plan. I took both of her hands and held them while I worked my way into position to go down on her. She had reacted when I started kissing her stomach, and this turned into "What the hell are you doing?" Once I started what I was down there to do, she was surprised but didn't stop me. She held onto my hands and repeated asking what I was doing several more times before putting her head back and really getting into it. She then had her first orgasm. Apparently they don't teach you that girls can do that in Indian nursing schools, and we lay there while I explained what just happened to her. After talking and her regaining composure, I rolled over and did my best to get it in. That didn't work and I was too stupid to bring any lube with me from the US. Spit didn't work too well either and she was in pain, so I stopped. She asked if I could have orgasms too, so I was obliged to show her that I was indeed able. She used her hands with some step-by-step coaching from me and was kind of dumbstruck by what happened. We cleaned up, kissed and laughed some more and fell asleep. After a few more painful attempts, we got that sucker in and have been banging like rabbits since. Come in here. I'd like you to see my penis. I can't stop laughing at that scenario. Throwaway because I'm a loser. Like a fool, I opted for an arranged marriage on the rebound. The girl I was originally seeing was batshit crazy, but something strange happens when you get rejected. More so than the hurt, you become incapable of making good decisions. Anyhow, was introduced to a girl. She had different interests, a different outlook on life, and didn't take too kindly to my casual humor. So like an idiot, I got engaged to her. Over the course of the engagement I was really busy with work, so didn't see her at all. Then came the marriage. It was surreal. There I was sitting on stage with a girl I hardly knew getting married. Most of the at the wedding were my parents' friends, etc. I hardly knew anyone there. Fast forward to the honeymoon. We were like awkward strangers. We actually never had sex on our honeymoon. Was the sex awkward? You're damn right it was. Fast forward 6 years later and we have a child. Did I make the right decision? If I wasn't a father, I'd leave tomorrow. I wouldn't let my parents choose my socks, but I let them choose my life partner, the loser that I am. So why am I sticking around? To cut a long story short, I want my child to do well in life, so I'm living an act. Do I have regrets? Don't we all? Am I a good husband? I never argue, never complain, and put on a smiling face. Have I my life up? Not totally. I earn quite a lot. And unlike the bullshit you hear in the movies, money gives you great options in life, and I try to enjoy as much of it as possible.